What started as just me taking the engine out, rebuilding the motor, and putting it back in the bike turned into a complete full custom build.
If you've been dreaming of owning a Harley-Davidson without breaking the bank, now might be the perfect time for that. Dealerships are drowning in unsold bikes and slashing prices like never before. So, with the recent huge discounts and low demands, Harley dealers are doing everything to clear their floors. Join us as we unveil 7 Harley-Davidson models that dealers want off their showroom. Number 7. Harley-Davidson FXDR 114. Harley-Davidson, a brand known for its loud, tough cruisers that echo the rebellious American spirit, once again decided to roll the dice. Wanting to reach a younger, thrill-seeking crowd, they built something totally different from what most people expected. A wild, modern-looking bike called the FXDR 114. Harley put all their hopes into this bold machine, promoting it as a high-speed, powerful muscle cruiser built for those who craved performance and style. On paper, it looked like a serious game-changer. At the heart of this machine was the Milwaukee 8 114 engine, a huge V-twin with a roaring 1,868 cubic centimeters of displacement. It pushed out a strong 94 horsepower and a crushing 119 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers put the FXDR among the strongest softail bikes ever made by the company. It was supposed to launch like a rocket and make every twist of the throttle feel like a blast of adrenaline. Harley didn't just stop with a strong engine. They added a lightweight aluminum swing arm, plastic body panels to save weight, and a massive 240mm rear tire to make the whole bike look like it just rolled off a drag strip. It was slick, it was loud, and it had an attitude written all over it. But in the real world, the dream quickly faded. One of the first things riders noticed was the terrible riding position. Harley had gone for a stretched-out, low-slung stance that looked fast and aggressive in pictures, but it turned out to be incredibly uncomfortable. The foot controls were way out in front, and the flat handlebars forced riders to lean forward in a way that put serious pressure on their backs, wrists, and necks. It looked cool for sure, but after an hour on the road, many people just wanted to get off the bike. That kind of pain didn't mix well with the thrill Harley promised. Things only got worse when it came to how the bike handled. The FXDR was built to blast down straight roads, not dance through curves. That fat 240mm rear tire might have looked intimidating, but it made the bike feel heavy and clumsy, especially when trying to turn or weave through traffic. It wasn't nimble, and riding through city streets or curvy roads quickly became frustrating. Riders had to wrestle the bike around corners, and the fun was drained out of the experience. And for the money Harley was asking, people expected more. At nearly $9,000 and up, riders had better options that were more comfortable, handled better, and were just as cool. The Indian Scout Bobber, Yamaha VMAX, and even Harley's own Lowrider S gave people more for their money without sacrificing comfort or ride quality. The FXDR's futuristic look and steep price made it a hard sell. It appealed to a small, very specific group of buyers, and most people simply weren't interested. Eventually, it all came crashing down. After just 2 years on the market, sales were so bad that Harley had no choice but to stop making the FXDR altogether. Dealerships were left stuck with leftover bikes, and to move them off the showroom floors, they had to start slashing prices. Huge discounts started popping up, and some dealers were practically begging people to take the bikes off their hands. Even then, many of them remained untouched, gathering dust instead of tearing up the streets. It was a harsh lesson for Harley-Davidson. They had tried to step outside their comfort zone with a powerful new design, but the result fell flat. The FXDR had the looks and the muscle, but not the ride. And if you think this was a big miss, wait until you hear about the next Harley project that tried to bring back a legend only to end up stuck in the middle of nowhere. Number 6. Harley-Davidson Pan America. Harley-Davidson made a surprising and daring move when they introduced the Pan America. This was a complete shift from the kind of motorcycles they were known for. Instead of sticking to their famous big cruisers and long-distance touring bikes, they decided to dive into the world of adventure motorcycles, a field they had never touched before. It was a big risk, but the company hoped it would attract a whole new crowd of riders. At the center of this new motorcycle was a completely modern engine called the Revolution Max 1250. Unlike the usual air-cooled heavy Harley motors, this one was a liquid-cooled V-twin set at a 60-degree angle. It had a displacement of 1,252 cubic centimeters and was designed to perform. On paper, it looked powerful with 150 horsepower and 94 pound-feet of torque. These figures put it in the same league as some of the best adventure motorcycles in the world. Harley wanted people to know they were serious about competing. They even brought in impressive new features that no one had seen before. One of the most talked about things was the bike's adaptive ride height system. This new suspension technology would automatically lower the seat when the bike stopped and raise it again while riding. It was a huge help, especially for shorter riders who often feel nervous on tall adventure bikes. This gave them more comfort and confidence at traffic lights or during slow maneuvers, while still keeping the bike's ground clearance high when needed. The Pan America also had an advanced electronics setup. It came with several riding modes: traction control, cornering ABS, and even a 6.8-inch touchscreen that could connect to Bluetooth. For Harley's first go at building an adventure bike, they really tried to throw in everything. On paper, it looked like a tough challenger that could stand against any of the top names in the market. But then, reality set in, and it wasn't kind. As riders began using the Pan America, problems started popping up. Reports began to spread about various technical issues. Riders complained about the electronics malfunctioning, engines overheating, and the gear shifts feeling rough and awkward. Some people even said their bikes broke down repeatedly and had to stay in the repair shop more than on the road. Word spread fast in the biking community, and soon people began losing trust in the Pan America. And that was just part of the problem. The adventure motorcycle market is already full of powerful, reliable machines from brands that have been doing this for decades. Companies like BMW, KTM, and Honda had already built strong reputations. The BMW R 1250 GS and KTM 1290 Super Adventure, for example, had been tested and proven over the years. They had loyal fans and long histories of success. So, trying to convince those riders to drop their trusted bikes for Harley's brand new model was never going to be easy. Even Harley's own identity worked against the Pan America. The brand was famous for making loud, powerful cruisers that ruled the highways. Their core fans didn't want an adventure bike, and the riders who loved adventure bikes weren't ready to trust Harley's first attempt. So, the Pan America ended up stuck in the middle, not quite winning over Harley fans and not really appealing to adventure riders either. Now, things have gone from bad to worse. Dealers are struggling to sell the Pan America. The bikes are piling up in showrooms and sales have dropped sharply. In a rush to clear out inventory, some dealers have started offering huge discounts, prices dropping to under $10,000. When the bike first launched, these kinds of discounts would have been unthinkable. But now, even with these low prices, many people are still not buying. The Pan America's journey shows just how difficult it is to step into a whole new market, even for a legendary name like Harley-Davidson. Trying something new takes courage, but success doesn't come easy. And if this sounds like a big failure, wait until you hear what happened with another Harley model. Number 5. Harley-Davidson VRod back. Back in the early 2000s, Harley-Davidson made a bold decision to step far outside their comfort zone. This wasn't just another updated cruiser or a slightly modified classic. No, this move was something completely different and daring. The company set out to create a high-powered cruiser that could actually compete with fast sport bikes, but still hold on to the bold, fearless image Harley was known for. They weren't just building a motorcycle, they were trying to start a new chapter. To pull off this risky move, Harley-Davidson joined forces with Porsche. Together, they designed a brand new liquid-cooled V-twin engine. That alone was a huge change, since Harley had always been about air-cooled engines. But they were determined to bring something fresh to the table, and this engine was going to be the heart of it all. It gave birth to a new kind of Harley, the VRod. This powerful machine was driven by what they called the Revolution engine. It was a 60-degree V-twin with a 1,252 cubic centimeters displacement, and it wasn't anything like the engines Harley fans were used to. It was built to rev high and run fast, delivering 120 horsepower and 84 pound-feet of torque. That kind of strength meant the VRod could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in less than 4 seconds. That made it one of the fastest bikes Harley had ever produced, and the looks? Just as wild. The VRod had a low-profile aluminum frame, drag-style handlebars, and a futuristic design that made it impossible to ignore. It looked like it came from the future. It stood apart from everything else in Harley's lineup, not just in power, but in style. At $16,995, it wasn't cheap, but considering what the bike promised about raw speed, modern tech, and a brand new image, it seemed like a worthy price. But things didn't quite go as planned. Even with all the buzz and excitement, the VRod didn't become the breakout hit Harley expected. It turned out that the very things that made it different also made it feel unfamiliar. For decades, loyal Harley riders had fallen in love with the deep, roaring sound and slow, powerful pull of the brand's traditional air-cooled engines. That throaty growl and strong vibrations weren't just technical traits, they were part of the soul of the ride. The Revolution engine, as powerful and refined as it was, didn't have that same raw feeling. It was smoother and faster, but to many Harley fans, it felt too clean, too quiet, too controlled. It didn't shake or rumble the way a true Harley was supposed to. For a lot of people, it just didn't stir the same emotions. It didn't feel like Harley-Davidson, and that was the problem. While the VRod was a masterpiece in many ways, fast, sharp, and brave, it missed the one thing that mattered most to Harley lovers, which was a heart. The reaction from Harley's loyal fans wasn't just lukewarm. It was full of disappointment. These were people who had spent years loving everything Harley stood for, and the VRod just didn't hit the mark for them. It wasn't only the change in engine or styling that turned them off, there was another issue that made things even worse, especially for those who loved riding long distances. The VRod came with a fuel tank that could only hold 3.7 gallons. That meant stopping at gas stations way more often than anyone wanted to. For riders who craved long, open-road journeys with as few breaks as possible, this was a major letdown. What was the point of having a high-speed, powerful cruiser if it couldn't go far without needing to refuel? That flaw became the breaking point for many. Harley-Davidson had taken a bold chance, but it ended up falling flat. The VRod tried to walk a fine line, modern enough to attract new riders, yet still holding on to Harley's attitude. But in trying to be everything to everyone, it ended up being not quite right for anyone. Traditional Harley riders thought it felt too sleek and clean, missing the grit and rumble they loved. Meanwhile, sport bike fans found it too bulky and inconvenient to really enjoy. It didn't find a true home in either group. Because of that, the VRod never built a strong following. Even with its speed, unique looks, and the cutting-edge engineering behind it, the bike remained on the outside, never quite embraced, never fully understood. It spent its entire time on the market as the odd one out, stuck between two worlds. It became a reminder of what can go wrong when a company tries to change its identity without fully thinking it through. Yes, the VRod was fast and brought something new to the table, but in the end, it simply wasn't what Harley fans were hoping for. And if you think that bike had an identity problem, just wait until you hear about the next one. Because unlike the VRod, this next Harley didn't just struggle with its image because no one even wanted it to begin with. Number 4. Harley-Davidson Glide CVO. For many years, Harley-Davidson has been famous for making some of the most well-loved touring bikes in the world. One of their biggest hits has always been the Road Glide, a motorcycle that riders admired for its mix of comfort, strength, and ability to travel long distances with ease. But Harley wanted to raise the bar even higher by creating something extra special. So they introduced the Road Glide CVO, a more exclusive and fancier version of the original. This bike was part of their special Custom Vehicle Operations collection, which is meant to offer top-level bikes straight from the factory, loaded with unique features, expensive finishes, and the best tech available. The Road Glide CVO came roaring in with Harley's powerful Milwaukee 8 1121 engine. This huge 1,923 cubic centimeters beast produced a thrilling 115 horsepower and an eye-popping 139 pound-feet of torque. It was built to be the best-performing touring bike Harley could offer. Along with the strong engine, they added a bunch of luxury upgrades. The sound system came from Rockford Fosgate and delivered rich, clear music, even when the bike was flying down the highway. It had a huge 12.3-inch touchscreen that showed bright colors and gave riders easy access to Bluetooth, maps, and a smart infotainment setup. On top of that, Harley gave the bike a fully adjustable suspension system, high-quality seats, and eye-catching design touches that made the bike pop compared to their regular models. With all these fancy upgrades, you'd think the Road Glide CVO would be a dream machine for touring fans. But there was one giant problem: its jaw-dropping price. Harley decided to sell this bike at $50,000, which was more than double the price of the already loaded Road Glide Special. And that's where things started to go wrong. Most riders quickly figured out that they could simply buy a Road Glide Special and spend a lot less money customizing it themselves. In fact, many of the parts and features found on the CVO could be added later at a lower cost. And since Harley riders have always loved making their bikes personal, they saw no reason to pay such a high price for a bike that came preloaded with upgrades they could choose themselves. Another big problem for the Road Glide CVO was how fast it lost its value. While most regular Harley bikes tend to hold their worth pretty well over time, the CVO models dropped in price almost immediately after someone bought them. This scared off many interested buyers who didn't want to spend a fortune on a bike that wouldn't be worth much later on. Dealers began to struggle. The bikes weren't selling as expected, and unsold models began piling up in showrooms. To fix this, many dealerships started cutting prices deeply, sometimes by over $10,000, just to clear out their stock. Still, even with these big discounts, many people continued to go for the regular Road Glide Special and customize it themselves, feeling it was a better deal and a better fit for their tastes. Number 3. Harley-Davidson Street Rod. Harley-Davidson had long been known for building big, loud bikes with strong engines and a bold presence. But every once in a while, they tried stepping out of their comfort zone. The Street Rod was one of those times, a bold attempt to win over a different crowd. Harley wanted something that would speak to younger city riders, people who wanted a little bit of cruiser cool mixed with the handling of a sportier motorcycle. So, they brought out the Street Rod, a sharper version of the Street 750. At the heart of the Street Rod sat a liquid-cooled V-twin engine with a size of 753 cubic centimeters. It pushed out 68 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. That was about 18% more power than the Street 750, making it one of Harley's more aggressive bikes for beginners. On paper, it looked like a solid choice for someone wanting a fast, affordable Harley. It had modern hardware too: inverted front forks, 2-disc brakes up front, gas-charged rear shocks, and sticky 17-inch tires. The bike seemed built for better handling and sharper control. With a starting cost of just $8,799, it promised performance at a lower price. But even with all that potential, things started falling apart quickly. One of the biggest complaints riders had was the riding position. Harley tried to make the bike feel more like a sport model, so they raised the foot pegs and used a smaller frame. But that just made things uncomfortable. Instead of feeling sleek and fun to ride, it felt tight and awkward, especially on longer rides. For a motorcycle meant to be a go-to for city commutes, this made no sense. Riders expected something smooth and easy. What they got was something that felt like it had been built without considering comfort. Then there was the issue of looks. The Street Rod was supposed to bring a modern, bold style, but it ended up looking like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. It wasn't edgy enough to be a true sport bike, and it didn't have the raw charm of a traditional Harley cruiser either. Harley's loyal fans saw it as bland and forgettable. Meanwhile, riders used to lightweight sport bikes found it too heavy and not nearly as quick as they hoped. Instead of grabbing its own place in the motorcycle world, it just floated in between, not exciting either side. Even worse, it faced brutal competition. The middleweight motorcycle class is packed with strong rivals. Bikes like the Honda CB650R, the Yamaha MT-07, and the Kawasaki Z650 dominated that market. They were lighter, stronger, and sometimes even cheaper. The Honda CB650R alone made 95 horsepower, a big step up in performance. Compared to these, the Street Rod just didn't stand out. On top of all that, riders started noticing issues with quality. Some complained about loose parts, rattling noises, and cheap materials. Others pointed out badly done paint jobs, body panels that didn't line up right, and switches that felt flimsy. These problems made it clear the Street Rod didn't get the same love and care Harley poured into their bigger, tougher cruisers. It felt like it was rushed into stores just to fill a gap in the lineup. As a result, sales dropped fast. Dealerships were left with too many unsold bikes. Even though Harley tried to promote the Street Rod as a cool, fresh choice for city life, people just didn't buy it. Eventually, dealers had to chop prices, sometimes knocking thousands off just to get them off the showroom floor. But even with those massive discounts, the bike struggled to find homes. Number 2. Harley-Davidson Livewire. In 2019, Harley-Davidson made a surprising move that no one expected. They stepped into completely new territory by launching their very first electric motorcycle, the Livewire. This wasn't a small experiment or a quiet test. It was a bold leap into the world of electric vehicles. The company poured everything into this project, hoping to create something revolutionary. At its heart, the Livewire used a strong permanent magnet electric motor that delivered a solid 105 horsepower and 86 pound-feet of torque. That kind of power meant it could shoot from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3 seconds, matching the speed of some of the fastest gas-powered sport bikes available. The bike ran on a large lithium-ion battery, which Harley claimed could last for about 146 miles in the city and around 70 miles on the highway. That made it a decent option for people riding around town, but it raised doubts for bikers who loved taking long road trips. Harley didn't hold back when it came to features. The Livewire came with top-quality Showa suspension, a high-end cornering anti-lock braking system, and a 6-axis sensor that helped control traction and stability. It also included a fancy touchscreen display, multiple ride settings, and a fast charging system that could charge the battery up to 80% in only 40 minutes if you had access to a direct current fast charger. But even with all those advanced features, the Livewire didn't win over buyers. The biggest reason was the price. When it first hit the market, the bike cost almost over $30,000, putting it in the same price range as Harley's most premium touring models. For that kind of money, riders could get a fully loaded Street Glide Special or a Road Glide Special, bikes with big, roaring V-twin engines built for long highway rides. That price tag alone pushed many Harley fans away. They just couldn't justify paying that much for a bike that didn't give them the same feel and sound they were used to. But it wasn't just the cost that caused problems. Most Harley riders simply didn't want an electric bike. The soul of a Harley has always been the rumbling engine, the shifting gears, and the deep growl that turns heads as it rolls by. The Livewire didn't offer any of that. It made no sound. There were no gears to shift through. It felt smooth and too quiet for many. Even though the speed and instant power were impressive, they didn't make up for the missing spirit that riders loved so much. To many die-hard fans, the Livewire felt less like a motorcycle and more like a fancy gadget with 2 wheels. Because of these issues, the steep price, the missing traditional feel, and limited battery range, dealers had a hard time selling them. They sat in showrooms untouched. Harley eventually realized things weren't going well and lowered the price to around $22,000. But even with that discount, it wasn't enough. People still weren't lining up to buy one. Trying to save what was left of the project, Harley spun off the Livewire as a new brand of its own, separating it from the Harley-Davidson name. The idea was to appeal to a different kind of rider, someone outside their usual fan base. But by that point, it was already too late. The interest just wasn't there. Dealers found themselves stuck with leftover bikes and started slashing prices by thousands just to clear the floor. Even with those massive discounts, the Livewire couldn't shake off its reputation. It ended up being one of Harley-Davidson's biggest failures. Now, if you think you've seen enough about their failures already, just wait till you see the next and last number on this list. Number 1. Harley-Davidson CVO Street Glide. Harley-Davidson has always been known for making top-tier touring bikes that mix comfort, strong performance, and that classic American look. But when they tried to raise the bar of luxury, they ended up creating a motorcycle that even their most loyal fans couldn't get behind. The CVO Street Glide was meant to be the crown jewel of Harley's touring lineup, a bike that promised unmatched quality, cutting-edge features, and that rare feeling of exclusivity. But what was supposed to be a dream machine turned out to be a huge letdown, both for customers and for dealerships. At the heart of the CVO Street Glide was the powerful Milwaukee 8 117 engine. It was a V-twin with a big 1,917 cubic centimeters displacement, pushing out 115 horsepower and 1,339 pound-feet of torque. It sounded like a big step up, but when compared to Harley's less expensive touring models, the performance boost wasn't all that groundbreaking. Sure, it packed a punch, but it didn't feel like enough of a leap for what they were charging. The bike did come with some fancy gear. There was a massive 12.3-inch touchscreen that let riders handle music, directions, and other features with ease. The audio setup was provided by Rockford Fosgate, which meant riders could enjoy rich, powerful sound even on the highway. It also came dressed in special paint jobs, fancy seat materials, and sleek finishes that made it look more exclusive. But even with all those bells and whistles, there was one problem that no one could ignore, which is the price. Harley priced this bike at a staggering $50,000. That's nearly double what you'd pay for a Street Glide Special, which offers almost the same experience. For most Harley fans, that price tag was just too much. Many quickly realized they could buy the $28,000 Street Glide Special and spend a little extra upgrading it with custom parts, and still come out with a bike that looked, sounded, and felt just as good, if not better. The only thing the CVO version really had going for it was its exclusivity. But to most riders, that just didn't seem worth an extra $20,000. Then came another big problem: how fast the bike lost its value. Unlike Harley's regular models that hold up well over time, the CVO Street Glide dropped in price as soon as it left the dealership. That scared off a lot of potential buyers who didn't want to watch their investment disappear. Most riders looking for a high-end experience preferred to build their dream bike from scratch, rather than pay extra for features they didn't hand-pick. As a result, the used market quickly became flooded with CVO models at bargain prices, making it nearly impossible for dealers to sell new ones at full price. Dealerships started feeling the pressure. Sales didn't meet expectations. Inventory started piling up. Bikes were sitting around, waiting for buyers who just weren't coming. Some dealers had no choice but to slash prices, knocking off over $10,000 or more just to get them off the floor. Still, even with those heavy discounts, the bikes weren't moving. They remained untouched, collecting dust while customers walked past them to look at more affordable options. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.